don't know me. I think I know everybody from the list. We'll take a couple of minutes to go around and introduce a little bit about myself. I was a faculty here in the math department. Both Tuan and myself are from the same department. Taught there for many years, and now I'm overseeing and managing the activities from the Center for Teaching Excellence, and also leading guided pathways work at the college. My co-presenter, I'm going to take a minute for him to actually, why don't you introduce yourself, Tuan?
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Tuan. I am a faculty member at Triton College. Yes, I am in the math department as well, too, along with college readiness. I have been a part-time adjunct at Triton College for several years before transitioning over to being a full-time faculty member like yourselves, all of us as faculty members. I love this topic because it is something that is passionate to me, because I try every day within the classroom setting and now in our virtual classrooms to motivate our students, but I also find that it is not just students that need to be motivated, it's also ourselves as faculty members to be motivated as well. So it is going to be my honor, along with Shelley, both of our honors, to present today to you, Motivating the Unmotivated. But again, I would like to emphasize for all of you that some of the tips and strategies that are being used and that we'll be talking about can not only be applied in the classroom, but can be applied online in your remote learning classrooms as well too. So please give us this opportunity to present to you some of those strategies and concepts, and we hope that it is beneficial and hopefully educational and useful, and it's our remote learning atmosphere that we're doing right now.
Yes, thanks, Tuan, for introduction. And yes, him and I were talking yesterday, and I said, motivating the motivated, this is a topic that can be applied to any platform. But you know what? This is the time that we're all talking about transition and remote teaching, and it's been a challenge. And so maybe you can share as a first-hand experience as current teacher and strategies that you are utilizing to motivate today's students in this environment, is online, online remote teaching, whatever you want to call it. So definitely, I think you'll hear that. Let's take a quick minute. We'll see how we do it. Maybe if you can just go one by one, the participants, and have a quick introduction, that would be great. Calvin?
Hello, everyone. Calvin Washington II. I've been teaching. I was teaching adjunct for several years in the business department, and I have transitioned on to take on a full-time role to teach in the business department.
Thank you, Calvin.
Welcome, Calvin.
Okay, I am looking at Arminda.
Yes.
Yes, would you like to do a quick introduction? Which department do you teach?
Oh, I am in the, yes, I am in the adult education. I've been teaching there for almost 12 years already. I am a math teacher. I'm teach GED, algebra and geometry and trigonometry.
Very nice. Welcome. Math
Oh,
is my
nice.
favorite.
Welcome.
Yes, nice,
Yeah.
nice to see you guys. I have seen you guys in some of the workshops at Triton.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yes, thank you, Lloyd.
Glenn?
Yes, hello, I'm Glenn Kahn. I'm an adjunct in the business school. I've been there for about 3 or 4 years.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome, Glenn.
And Gretchen's mic is not working, but let's see. She is a full-time faculty in the business department, excited to be here. Great. Welcome, Gretchen.
Welcome, Gretchen.
Magdalena?
Hi, I'm with engineering technology, and this is my first semester teaching.
Very nice. Welcome.
Oh, welcome.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Magdalena.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm an adjunct and I teach theater.
Okay.
Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Welcome. Russell?
He wrote in.
Yes.
Russell, go ahead, Shelley.
Yep, my audio and video are not working. I know there have been issues. Russell teaches in the College of Business as an adjunct for the last 3 years. All right, a lot of business people. Good to see you guys.
Welcome,
All
Russell.
right. And Selma.
Hi, everybody. I'm Salma. I'm full-time faculty at Med Department. I was also an adjunct for 7 years, and this is my 4th semester as full-time. And nice to see you, everybody.
Okay.
Welcome, Selma.
Thanks, Tuan.
Thank you, Selma. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to our main presenter for today. Tuan, take it away.
All right. In tradition of working with the students, in this case for all of you, I'm hoping that everything works out well. And right now we're in our challenging time. What I normally try to do is, if you on your screen for all of you, I try to do some type of motivation every day in the classroom. If it's not with a short saying or a short poem or even some inspirational music. In the presentation, if we were on campus, for to give you an idea, I would have had a song playing while we were all having our conversation. And I normally would do this to get students in that motivation of looking at education differently, and rather than it's going to be a boring lecture or a boring classroom, because again, I normally teach evening courses, and most evening students, which is going to be the non-traditional students, do not want to come to a classroom that's really boring. So you try to give something that's going to be exciting for them and try to make it also educational at the same time. So again, these are some of the things that I would do in the classroom, as you see on your screen, just to give them that motivation to start off with. Some of the reasons that students are unmotivated: there's a lot of pressure based on outside environments, and those outside environments, in this case I'm looking at, will be at home. There may be work situations, there may be family situations as well too. And when I define by home and work, I define home in this case in the sense of their dwelling that they live in, and wherever it's an apartment, condo, or house, whatever, but it's those things that they have to deal with at home in the sense of bills and responsibilities. And then with family, I say to students in this case, is dealing with those things that we look at, if it's our spouses, if it's our children, if it's our parents, those things. All these different things in this case come into the classroom with the student, along with those low self-esteem. You have those lack of support from family and home, and even at school, because students also remember those things when they had in high school or coming from a different institution where they had that lack of support. So they figured that in the next course or the next class, it's the same thing. Then they all come in with some low expectations as well too, thinking that they've heard from peers or from other instructors or even friends who've taken the classes, or even associates that have taken the class, and saying, oh, this class is going to be X, Y, and Z, and not knowing how you as the instructor or professor is going to be in the classroom, because every semester is a little bit different. So all these factors, that reasons are where students become just unmotivated. They don't see anything in the relationship of how they're going to be in working with the class. But it's important that we understand that we have to make the classes relevant to students themselves. When we design our courses, in this case, and I'm saying we and putting this in a generalization, when we design our courses, we design it based on the curriculum. But sometimes we may not design the course based on the individuals that we may get into the courses. So for example, we may have students who are full-time parents. And if they're taking a math class, they're trying to see how that math class is going to work with them. Then you have individuals who may have working situations where they have 2 or more jobs, and they're taking a class and they're trying to see how this is going to work with their job as well. Then you have individuals who come in with family issues, where they're trying to see how, if this class I'm talking about math for me, how it's going to relate to their son or their daughter or their children. These things is where they're looking for that they don't see any type of association to it, and becomes now less motivated in the class after the class has been introduced and we go through our syllabi and we go through how the class is being structured. A lot of times, and what I've seen as well too, and it's rare, I want to say that, it is rare that we as instructors, we have that lack of enthusiasm in the class because we've taught the class several times and we know our subject. That's why we teach the class. That's why we're at the college level, because we know the subject content, we know the subject area. But sometimes you'll see some of our colleagues who get less motivated in teaching it because they're doing the same thing over and over and over. And then you have those individuals that don't want to change their platform and how they teach the course because it works with or has worked with classes in the past. But now we're dealing with a whole different type of students that may not work anymore. So we have to find different ways to motivate our students, but then also motivate ourselves as well too. And as said, right now, what Shelley is going to be talking to you about is the data that's related to that.
Yes, thank you, Tuan. And these, I think the next two slides are my only slides because you're doing such a great job. But we talked about it as we talk about strategies. We both thought it might be good to share with you all a little bit of the data on student engagement. I think it's very relevant and ties very directly with the topic for today, that's motivation and how it impacts. So what you're seeing here, I don't know how familiar you are with the CESI data. It's Community College Survey of Student Engagement. It's a institutional level national data survey that we give out, other colleges give out every 3 years, and it gives us really good data and student voice on some of the benchmarks you're seeing down there. One of them is active and collaborative learning, student effort. That's what we're focusing on when we talk about the topic of motivation and how much effort our students today are really paying in their, putting in their studies in our classes. Then we have academic challenge, student-faculty interaction, support for learners. So I think I'm not going to go too deep into all the benchmarks, but as we look at some of the student effort, the questions that students fill out their responses, I think it's very much reflected in what we're discussing today. And it's interesting, and that's why we decided to bring it today, to see that our own students are, when they're filling out the surveys, are saying that they're not putting the effort that they should be putting. Our data on, if you look at it from this benchmark point of view, our college students especially compared to other colleges, our scores are very low. So wanted to go deeper into the student effort benchmark only. And in the report, CESI shares some of the aspects of our lowest student engagement. Again, it's interesting to see, kind of sad to see. And I'm sorry, what you're seeing, the highlight should really be on the student effort 10A. And this is the item that we really score very low on. And if you look at that survey question, it's not really, you won't see the exact wording of it here, but it's asking our students, how much time do you really put towards studying, reading, preparing for class, doing homework and other activities related to your program? And they themselves are declaring, for whatever reasons, right, motivation. That's what we're trying to really dig into, but they're not putting the effort that they should be putting. So we just wanted to kind of bring this, tie it all together to what our students are saying, what we're experiencing, what you experience, and just trying to find ways to make them motivated, make them interesting. I'm going to skip to this. We do want to come to this, but towards the end of the presentation. And that's when I think this will probably make a little bit more sense. I should have put it towards the end. So we're going to move along.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Shelley. Some of the reasons, as Shelley pointed out with the CESI survey, we as faculty members, sometimes it's being selected classes that will probably do it. But nevertheless, some of the reasons that well, educators are not motivated in the courses. And again, I was taking a class, a postgraduate course, and we were talking about this in our class and talked about it's not so much as to motivate the students, but sometimes we need motivation ourselves. So I thought it'd be great to highlight and talk about some of the reasons that educators are just not motivated. And again, as you all notice on your screen, it is the idea that the pressure to cover material. Sometimes we feel that we have to cover so much material that we feel that we just don't have that motivation to do so. And again, it varies from person to person. Some individuals are excited about their materials, and some individuals, in this case, because they've taught the material before, then they just try to have to find something that's exciting about it. Then there's that low self-esteem. Sometimes we're human. We're all human. So sometimes we may have a bad day. Some days we have good days. We have the lack of support from our colleagues. And I think I want to highlight this because it does happen at some institutions, not saying that would happen at Triton, but it does happen at some institutions that individuals within their respective fields have the lack of support from their colleagues, in the sense of maybe exchanging ideas or concepts or theories that they're working on or doing in their classes, or even working together on different things. And for example, what I mean by that is maybe working with myself as a math person and maybe working with a psychology person so that my students understand how the psychology and mathematics go together. Or you may have an individual who is working in the science department working with an English person and seeing how those papers work together so that students understand why they're writing the content area or writing those papers for those specific different fields. Then you have the lack of professional disrespect. And now, there are some articles that say that some educators just don't have that support of that, so they don't feel motivated in doing anything because they don't see enough articles or enough professionals out there in the same field to know that they're doing something well. And again, there's not a lot of data to support that because it's very rare, but it sometimes does happen in conversation when you're talking with others from institutions or peers from different states or from different countries as well too. Then you have the lack of the self-motivation ourselves. So some days, I have to admit, there was 2 days last week that I just felt that, oh my God, I didn't want to do the class anymore because I've taught this material before. Why they're not understanding it? I just wanted to give up. But I had to find some motivation in with myself so I can present the material to my students. And I think it was a lot more challenging in presenting the material in this remote learning as well too, because I'm used to interacting with my students. And I think some individuals in their articles that are coming out now in the remote learning, that a lot of individuals not feel that they are connecting well with their students. And then we have the negative relationship. Oh my God, there's days I feel the same. There's days even in the classroom, I feel that this negative, this negative aura around that you have, like no one really understands me, or you're trying to get them to do it and you're like, my students are not just understanding, so I'm going to give up. If they're not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. So there's that negative relationship that you have, or that negative attitude that you bring in the classroom with you, and so your students become unmotivated as well too. Now, again, these are just some of the highlighted reasons that some students, or at least some educators, get unmotivated. But again, as we have our discussion for all of you, there may be others that maybe not on the list yet. For example, can anyone think of any reason why you are not motivated in the classroom as an educator?
Go ahead and raise your hand if you want to respond to Tuan's questions. Anyone? Go ahead, Arminda.
Tuan, you mean in the classroom, like in the physical classroom, or just during this teaching time that we're going through?
You could be both. I'll give you an example in this case. Like I said, there was last week I'm teaching intermediate algebra class, for example, And there was days where I'm doing 2 classes back to back, like my Monday and Wednesday class. And last week, I just felt that after my first class, I'm like, I don't want to keep, I just can't keep doing this. And I'm using it as an example because I just felt there was no motivation for myself to go in and be supportive with them, because I'm used to being in the classroom with them, and I'm used to bringing in that energy, and then I'm sitting at home like I'm doing now, and then comfortable in this case, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm presenting the information, and I will ask if anyone has questions. So I'm trying to get them engaged. So now I'm losing my motivation as an instructor because my students, I just feel that they're not being motivated. So that's what I mean by the lack of self-motivation, because I don't feel I'm giving the motivation they need, or they're not giving me my motivation that I need.
Yes,
Yes, Selma.
I understand. Yes, because see, I kind of feel the same because in the classroom, so it is a very interactive. So teacher, students, students, teacher, students to students. And right now is like in front of a screen, even though, because you know that we have to block them in we cannot share the videos because we're not allowed to. And
Okay.
it's like just talking in front of a screen. I can my frustration is that, so like I cannot see their expressions, and so even though I try to get them engaged in the class, and I'm actually have a pretty good assistant in the class, so I have 11 students and I keep the 11 students, so and all of them trying to get connected. But as you guys were talking at the beginning, it is like kids are around sometimes, sometimes pets, sometimes husbands or wife, or see, it is a lot of factors, and sometimes it's like that's one of my biggest motivations, because students get distracted. Like I gonna say 30% of the time, 70% of the time, so they are engaged. At least then.
I think your audio was going in and out a little bit, but that's okay. No
Oh,
problem.
I'm sorry.
No, okay.
Selma, you want to share something?
Okay.
Yeah, I actually have the same experience as Tuan. I cannot see their faces and I don't know exactly what they think. I'm pretty good on reading faces when I teach math. But right now, when I finish the material or section or part of the material that I'm covering, and I'm asking any question, nobody asks, nobody wants to participate. And that's kind of really puts me in a bad mood. So I was thinking what I'm doing wrong, or can I do something else? It happens, I'm not saying that happens every time, but once or twice a week during the, I don't know, 6 different classes, it happens. So.
And you're right. And I think that some of us as educators, it's like feeding on that motivation from them to help us become better motivators in the classroom. And I think that it does real happen in this case. Like I said, I use my example because, like I said, there was last week I back-to-back class, and I'm thinking, okay, and you're right. I agree with you, Selma, in the sense that I see maybe 1 or 2 of them, but it's not required that they have to be face-to-face with me. But if I can't see their expressions and thinking, am I getting it across? Am I doing something wrong? Did I not explain it well? Did I not use enough video? Did I not use enough material? Did I not cover enough problems? And I'm thinking, you're right. I'm thinking, I can't see that. So I'm thinking, well, I must be doing something wrong. So I'm losing my motivation to now teach the next class because I don't have the motivation, or that I joke with my students. I used to tell them that when they ask me why I'm so bubbly today, I say I'm so high because I see all your wonderful faces. And now it's like, So yeah, I agree with you in that. Gretchen wanted to share something.
Okay, so Gretchen's, I think mic wasn't working. So Gretchen is saying when you're teaching, have just finished finish a section and the next class you ask what you just taught and there's no response, can create a sense of what's the point if no one wants to participate. Yeah.
You're right, and you're trying to feed off their motivation to help your motivation. And I know it's a human reaction. We have all have those different scenarios that we do that, and that's why I thought it was imperative, since we're talking about motivating the unmotivated. How do we keep ourselves motivated as well too, when we're looking at and talking about motivating our students? And sometimes we just have to look for those balances to do so. And yes, I think it is trying to feed off the energy, and that's just me. And I think Christina is saying the same thing in regards to, you don't see it because now this remote learning, and I attended several webinars, they were talking about this as well too. You're trying to see their energy or their motivation, or you're trying to get their positive form or something from them and say, okay, yeah, I'm doing this right. We're going through a hard time right now. You're trying to be spiritual in the sense of keeping them lifted and keeping yourself lifted at the same time. And you just have to find how to find that balance sometimes. And again, like, I've tried a new thing for all of you with my students. I tried it like 2 weeks ago. I started saying good morning or good afternoon, my angels. And it was yesterday that I found very hilarious with one of my students who's saying, good morning, Charlie. And I'm like, wait, oh, I got it. And everyone in the class was sending me the emojis of clapping their hands and smiling. And I was thinking, okay, now maybe I'm doing something. Now I'm motivated for the next class. Now I'm full of energy from what the joke was, that I'm now Charlie and I have all my angels with me. So I thought that was really cool. And it gave me enough motivation to keep doing, even though, like I said, I know the material. It's not the material wise. It's seeing their faces. And I think some of you are correct in saying that you really can't see them, so you don't know if they're responding well to you.
Anybody else would like to share? Yep. Russell's point is very valid. He's saying the biggest mistake we can make is to attempt teach our class if thinking it's still a face-to-face class. Right.
That's so true, Russell. You are absolutely true. And I think one of the things that, maybe not one, maybe two or three things that hopefully taken from this presentation for all of you, is that we have to look at it in the sense that technology is working with us so that we can continue to educate our students, but we have to think of different ways with using technology to get our students not just motivated, but keep ourselves motivated as well too. And like I said, that was me. I didn't think it was actually going to work, saying good morning, angels, and then it wasn't until a couple of days later, and then we have several students saying hi, Charlie, and I had to really think about it and say, oh, Charlie's angels, and I was like, oh, okay. So with the students that called in, they were laughing about it, and with the students who were chatting in the chat area, like you all are doing, I thought it was like, okay, maybe I'm getting somewhere, because I'm now touching something that is humorous to them to keep them returning to the classroom or our virtual classroom, because I've tried, in this case, doing extra credit points, doing hidden tricks within the lecture, or I called it a hidden treasure picture. I would do a presentation in regards to doing with mathematics, and I'll put a picture in there by mistake, and I'm like, oh my God, what is that? And then you have maybe 2 or 3 people like, oh, Professor, that's an apple. Why'd you put an apple in there? I'm trying to see if they're engaging with me, but keeping that excitement, motivation like I used to do in the classroom. So I'm trying to be the same person I was online and in the classroom. And Russell, you were right. We need to remember that all our students have the same technology availability to them at home. And you're right. we do have to remember that, and we also have to take in consideration for those individuals that do not. So we have to find, and I'm thinking this is a wonderful segment to go into our students to talk about us as professionals and how we are trying to keep ourselves motivated. And I think what is important too, that we also be honest with our students in this case, because in the beginning, when we first moved from after spring break and remote learning, my first day class with my students was just talking about how are we going to work together in this atmosphere or in this environment. And a lot of the students who did not want to take an online class before felt the pressure of there was going to be a difference of how they're going to do with the class and how the class is going to be structured. So it was that first day orientation to talk with them in regards to, yes, here's the things I'm going to try to keep you all motivated, because now we're in a different realm dealing with virtual classroom, but it's still me and it's still you. So it's still me as your professor, but it's still me with my, bad math jokes. It is still me going to do a lot of examples. It's still me going to be calling on our secretary in the classroom, because for all of you who don't know, in my classroom, I usually have a secretary who engage with the class, but they also engage with me. So we're going back and forth. So if a person walks in the class, they think we're arguing, but we're not. We're engaging to get everyone on board. So it's just not me talking in the classroom. And I had to approach it a little bit different online as well, too. So you're right. We do have to remember those things and how technology works with everyone and how it works with us as professionals. But someone has something to say? Okay. Well, in addition to the research, there was also these different strategies that we can use. And again, I say these strategies can be used in the classroom, and not only in our virtual classroom for all of you, but it can be used in our traditional classes if we ever get back on campus. And like I said, share, number one, it says share your story with your students. So that's what I was doing. I was telling on the first day of classes, I was sharing with my students that, hey, I'm kind of nervous about doing this as well too. My motivation actually comes from all of you and seeing all of you, and now I miss doing and seeing that. So I'm trying to get them to understand my point of view as well too. But then I let them share some of their fears of doing the remote learning and try to incorporate those fears in the sense of we can overcome this and we can work it together. And number two, it says incorporate the students in the learning process. And again, that's where I had the secretary in the classroom doing the same thing. I'm incorporating the student. They're telling me, oh, professor, that's not how we would do it. Okay, Madam Secretary or Mr. Secretary, let's give an example how that will work out. So I'm trying to do the same thing now in my online or virtual classroom for remote learning to still keep them in there. But then I gave the examples of using their names and majors. And again, I do that for my introduction when I find out my students' majors and show them how the math relates to those different areas so they don't feel that they're just learning just to go to a next class, for example. Then we're looking at sparking the curiosity in the subject. Yes, we all have our own sparks. We have our own curiosities. We were going through our master's program and then maybe going into a PhD program as well too. But we have to find what the students' curiosity as well. Sometimes you have individuals, and I'll use me as an example, who are taking a math class and come in and it's like, oh, they told me I need to take a math class. Well, first I ask who's they. And then second, I say, well, how do you think math is related or how math is not related to what you're going to be doing? So, and then I talk about those things on the first or the second day to show them, yeah, we are going to show some connection and try to get that curiosity out of them and saying that, oh, I do love math. oh, it can apply to business. I never thought it could apply this way. And it's no offense to my colleagues who are business instructors whatsoever. Again, next one is looking at eliminate the experiment. In this case, it's looking at those outside factors that students come in with that give them that reason they can't do it. And again, those factors in this case will be, you have family members that told them that, oh my God, you're going to college, you never did well. Or you're taking this class, you are not the best student. Or you are at the college level, but you did horrible in high school. You know, those negative factors that made them not be the person that they wanted to be. But then also look at those factors that made them who they want to be. So award those things as well too, but also emphasize that the negative factors still build to their positive as well. A lot of times it could be different. Each student is totally different in the sense of what those factors they come in with. Then next it says to look at free. Create activities that are free for grading. Then again, like this is what I'm doing in my class now for my students to keep them to return to the remote learning. I give activities in the sense of my angels, I call it the angel points now, that they get points in when we're doing our presentation on Blackboard, and there's hidden treasure points inside, and then at the end they have to do it in the discussion area and tell me what those hidden treasure points were. And again, it's not a grade, but it's just to see if they were still being and participating in it. It's like, oh my God, I didn't know this happened. And you mentioned this, and how it relates to, you know, X, Y, or Z. Then looking at and tapping into or asking your students about what motivates them, using video games, using sports, using anything that you feel that after speaking with your students that motivates them into doing the class itself. And Russell replied.
That's very nice.
Go ahead, Shelley.
Yeah, no, I'm just reading. I said that's very nice. So Russell sends out a note every day that includes a positive quote. It helps to motivate the student, helps to let them know he's thinking of them. Yeah, and we understand what they're going through. Yeah.
Russell, I agree with you. I do. I love that, and I'm going to borrow that a little bit because I actually do it within our conversations. So I like the idea of emailing them too. I do like that, Russell. I do. We do use strategies and using groups and teams. I don't so much do it in remote learning because it's a little bit challenging to do so. But in the classroom, we did do that. We did that, you know, a lot. And it was what we call the team build skills, is what I named it as. So there'll be one day where they'll sit in groups, but they never get the same groups all the time. And it gets them to engage with other classmates. And yes, I agree, I will do. And thank you, Russell. I will engage with them, but then also get them to feed off the motivation from each other as well, too. And so, practice what we teach. Yes, it is important. I do it a lot. I tell students that even I give them related history stories, especially now me, who is a lifelong learner, but I'm going back and getting another degree, and I tell my students, yeah, I know what you're going through. I try to do this, and you know, here's things I do to motivate me in my classes that I'm taking. And sometimes I feel that, yeah, I mean, I know I'm with colleagues who went through a lot of education, but sometimes I fear that and I tell my students the truth, I feel sometimes I don't belong there either, but I find the strength to be in there. So I give them that, you know, relationship. It's real world relationship in the sense that not only do you as students going through, but we as professors, if we're going back and getting our education. And then I allow them the time to process everything, even if it's going from home or in the classroom. We try to wrap it up. Usually at the end of the class, I would give about 10 minutes to do a wrap up. That's where my secretary come in And the secretary at the time usually chooses several individuals to do certain things to wrap it up, even if it's a wrap session, which was the last one we had before spring break. The secretary chose or selected 3 individuals, and they wrapped our summary, which I thought was really cool. But it gave them time to process what the things that we were talking about in class. And it was also that wonderful opening segue to having a wonderful spring break, knowing that we didn't know we were going on remote, but I thought that was really impressionable. And Russell added into the text area, all of you, a website if you wanted to go to get some additional quotes with pictures. And Russell, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
In addition to some additional strategies for all of you that you could use and can use, is challenge your students. Challenge your students with new situations. Using an old problem that you had in the classroom, but challenge them with it, even though you know the answer, but challenge them to find a new solution. And to do it, actually, I have to say, this actually worked out yesterday. We were talking about Pythagorean's theorem, and in the class, for those who don't know, Pythagorean's theorem is looking at a right triangle, Selma knows, and Shelley, but looking at a right triangle and knowing if it is truly a right triangle, so you're adding a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, and seeing if both sides of the equal sign equal to each other. So my challenge was using the same technique of using Pythagoras, but using it in a different scenario. So I was using what some of my students were talking about, and we were talking about maybe a sociology situation and seeing how it balances out and saying if it was a true triangle in this case. Encouraging their creativity is very important. Like I said, I love my students then when they call me Charlie, which at first I had to really realize what that was, but it was, I encouraged them to do that, and I encourage my students to come in with maybe one idea. Usually the secretary, that person is not selected into the day of class, but usually comes in with something that is an activity like we would do in the classroom that they'll be working with their groups. And that leads to the next one. They discover their passion within it as well too. And I tell them that I had a student who said before that all my world is math. And I said, yeah, it could be. I could wake up math, drink math, sleep math, eat math, I do math, I am math. And my students laugh at it, but I tell them that it is what we find in our passion that makes us who we are, but it also finds within our passion to make us more excited about learning and about what we do. So with that, it leads up to create learning, the learning environment to support their creativity. And again, praise your students for any and all things that they do. I think what makes us wonderful educators, and let me take that back, what I think what makes us outstanding educators is that we do these things on a daily basis, but we really don't realize that we do them. And I think that is what happens, that some of our colleagues do. They do those things, they just don't realize. And I think if we highlight them even more for our students, then we will have those students who will come in a lot more motivated for the classes, even if it is every day or just for a week. But find that strength so that they can be motivated. And then it'll keep us motivated as well too, because we'll feed off that motivation in this case. So usually at this time in the classroom workshop, I will open up and think of and say to any of you, do you have any concepts or techniques that was not covered that you found in your classrooms or with your students that kept you and your students motivated?
Would anyone like to share that hasn't already been shared in the chat box? Okay, I think we have already covered a lot in Tuan, so maybe you want to keep going.
Okay. Well, there's more to the list, everyone. So I do apologize. Energize, add your energy to what you do in the classroom. Like I said, I'm trying to do the same thing I would do in the classroom. I usually go in all happy and everything, but I'm trying to do the same thing online. So if they can hear it in my voice, I'm trying to do the same. I demonstrate and show and engage a lot of the purposes that what purpose of what I do in the class, and I'm doing the same thing with them online in our remote learning. Let me take that back. I engage in community activities and services. So I try to tell them some of the things that I do that relate to mathematics. And again, like I said, my student who said that I eat, drink, live all math, but I tell them, you know, with my friends, I gave them the example when my friends and I go out, my friends usually give me the bill because they know I can divide it very quickly. And they laugh about it, but just trying to show them that mathematics is just not in the classroom. It is used in everything that you do, but it's trying to show them that you're passionate and motivated about what you do. You can put it in any and every subject or any and every scenario. And creating that trust of learning, the trust learning environment is very important because we have students who get very scared in talking to their colleagues, to our colleagues, which is their professors. And if they don't feel that they can trust the professor and sitting down and talking with he or she, then they feel that they're not going to be motivated in the class because they rely on that trust. And building that trust with your students is very important, and keeping them, especially for those who are going in the majors that we are teaching, they want to find that connection and find that you understand what they're going through as well too. And that's, again, leading to last by creating that vision, that class vision. My class, I told them in the beginning that my vision for them is not to become mathematicians at the end of the semester. It is not to become it is not to become Einsteins. It is not to become the Aristotles of tomorrow. It's to become the person that will help you. It's to become the math person inside of you when you're sitting with your friends and doing a basic math problem, and they look at you and think, I never knew you know how to do that. So I tell them that this class is never going to be where you're going to be those Pythagoras or Aristotle people, but it is going to be the class where your light will shine and that your math abilities will be known to your classmates and to you as well. So I try to create that so that they understand, because a lot of you, especially someone would notice, and Shelley as well too, and Amelia, that teaching students mathematics that was taught in high school and they feel that they were being taught all over again, sometimes they get embarrassed. So you try to find where they, in this case, understand that it is a foundation that you're trying to build with them, and it's a foundation to build that understanding, and it's a foundation to help them and say that what you've learned here will help you in your future classes at the college level. Oh, I forgot, there's more. All right. Incorporate your students' lives and some of the stories in your classrooms. Yes, like I said, I went through a symposium, which is before, it was in New Orleans for all of you, and all these things, and I added some things too that we were talking about. And the young lady who was the presenter had me to stand up, and she said, you do all these things in your classroom. I said, maybe not every day, but I do incorporate my students' lives in the stories that I create for the word problems that we're talking about, so they have so it's relevant to them and it's related to them. And sometimes they may not even know, because I changed the exams on the quizzes. I add my students' names on there. Sometimes they don't catch it yet. Sometimes you have, in this case, like I hear, let students have choices. I do. One of my ideals for my Math 80 class is that I created a project, and the project in this case had my students to decide how they were going to collect the data. So they had to tell me that up front so I can put it within the project. not knowing that when they got the project, what their ideals, what they were talking about was actually incorporated. So they didn't think I was listening. So I actually gave them some choices. And one of the choices they wanted to do, for example, for all of you, was to collect data from their classmates in regards to the weight. We were talking about how formulas can be used to look at different things. So we're looking at formulas to look at weight. We're looking at formulas to look at, for my students who are going to criminal justice, they were looking at formulas to see if a person, is alcohol levels risen, or how can they decrease their alcohol level. So I did some research for them to do that, and they didn't realize I incorporated their ideas and concepts within the project that they were working on. And my students just finished their project, for all of you, and they had to submit it. So I have to go through their project, and their project is kind of lengthy, but it was collecting the data, and so that what, some of the things that they realized that they're doing is what we did talk about in class. And this leads to the last, yes, it is the last, share with your colleagues some things that happen in your classroom. And that's why this is very passionate to me in doing this presentation with Shelley, because it is what I am passionate about. I'm passionate about sharing my concepts and ideas with my colleagues of what I'm doing. It may not work with everyone, but you're sharing with each other and with us, with ourselves, and saying, well, I tried this, maybe you could try this in your classroom. Because again, right now I have a colleague in this case who is having a hard time in trying to get her students interactive, or what I'm trying to think of, active in the Blackboard session. So I shared with her, use a hidden treasure when you're talking with them, and then see if they're, motivated in doing that in this case. I would say that in my business department, we do share a lot. It is so helpful. I agree. And I think what I'm trying to say is that to say that, Gretchen, not every department does it. There's some people in this case, depending on their departments, may not, because they feel that their ideas may not work with everyone, but not realizing that we're all in this together. And I tell my students the same thing. We're all in this together. And in every class, I always end with the class of saying that be well, be safe, and remember, we're in this together. And we are. I mean, they're learning from home, we're teaching from home, and we're doing the same thing. We're trying to keep them engaged in the classroom, trying to keep them engaged in the screen, because again, like I said, my students, I miss seeing their faces. I really do. I do. And I try to find that. So again, like I said, to wrap this part up, and sharing with your colleagues what happened in the classroom, it's very imperative, because the fact that those students that you have in your class may trigger or go into other courses with your colleagues, and they figure if they see the same things that you're doing in your class, maybe they'll happen in the next class, so that they can keep motivated. Even if you're teaching a subject, for example, and I'm going to use myself, my liberal arts math class, for example, and I have a student who says, do you teach college algebra? And I say, yeah, but I haven't taught it in a semester. And they're looking for me to teach that class so they can keep that same energy that they've had in the liberal arts class, for example. And I'm like, yeah. And sometimes that's, it just keeps them going. They find that within ourselves in this case. And when they find that, they want to use that in their benefit. Right now, here's some strategies that you can use to connect with your students. It has been talked about in several presentations. I've done a presentation of men of color. I've done a presentation on diversity. I've done presentations in regards to just talking in the classroom. I've attended webinars that talk about how to connect with your students. And Russell did a wonderful thing by saying email, because, email is one of the things to keep your students connected. It is also bringing in some positive energy in the classroom as well, too, and engaging in casual conversation. And these are things, I know that some of my colleagues think you do these things all the time, but, I switch them up. But I think it's imperative that we learn our students' names, because the students in this case want to feel that they have that connection with their professor. and not knowing, not thinking that they're just a person in the classroom. And let me define what I mean by that. Students in this case, we're telling them, hey, call us Professor Dean, or call me Mr. Dean, or call me Dr. Dean. So we're telling them, here's what we want you to call us. But we have colleagues that may not call our students. They're like, hey, you, or you in the red, you sitting in the back with the blonde hair. That's not their names. So learning the student's name gives them the connection to the classroom, but it also shows that you know who they are rather than just calling them by different things. And I know that some of my colleagues, Russell, I think you may do this, because I think I remember you saying this, that I think you have them when they go in the classroom, you have have name tags for them, if I'm not mistaken, so that you do see their names and then you still call on them rather than saying, I'm thinking of your name, John, and it's Joe, something like that. And what's also included with this for all of you, it is a video. This is the link for the video. And I see that we don't have a lot of time, so I don't want to play the video itself because I do want to leave time for us to have a conversation. But it is a great video for all of you, and I think we do send the presentation to you all so that you can link on it. It is a video that I show to my students, in this case, to talk about how to engage with each other and connect with them. I know that we have colleagues in this case that do, like Gretchen saying, she creates a seating chart. Yes, I think that's wonderful, and using that to, learn their names. I use a technique I know Roseanne, my colleague, and Tina, my colleague, and we do different techniques, but I know we share the same concept of, I have my students introduce themselves. Roseanne, for example, uses a verbal connection in the sense of using a word or word association with the person's name to remember the person's name. I do the same thing in regards to when they talk. I have them mention 3 things about themselves, and I try to remember those 3 things to associate to that person's name. And I told my students in the beginning of the semester that their first quiz is going to be, based on this. And my first quiz is to learn their names and to give their papers back to them. So they always tease, every class I have a student who will tease me and say, wait, you're taking a quiz too? Yeah, my quiz is to learn your names. So why should we always give you quizzes? And so that's one of the things I do is connect with my students as well too. I learn them. I do send them a lot of emails because I tell them that I'm probably one of their professors who may send them tons of emails. So I do email communications, but I do like the idea of doing inspirational emails as well too. But I do try to do a lot of that in the classroom. And again, I say for all of you, you are going to get this presentation. So if you do look at the link, the video, it's a wonderful video. That's what I was going to share. But it was my understanding when I put this together. I have to admit, I'm bad at this. I thought it was going to be 2 hours long. So I had all these things I planned out, and it's only an hour presentation. But nevertheless, this picture for all of you is when we were in the classroom. I had, after seeing the video and thinking about ourselves in our classroom, put you in groups and saying, what things do you do so you can connect with your students? So let's take, can we do a minute or so? Do we have time?
I think when I looked at it, we'd said 90 minutes. So unless participants have to go somewhere, I think we can take some time.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this time for all of you, we're not going to divide into groups. Let's see, can you share with everyone in the group of some of the things that you do to connect with your students?
Glenn?
One thing I do, and it's not only connect with students, but to gain their trust, and it's probably hard to do in the math areas, but in the other areas I think it's okay to do, is I try never to tell a student when they answer that they're dead wrong. I try to take whatever their answer is, and if it's not the right answer, to at least use a component of that answer to get to the right answer so they don't feel deflated.
Yeah, it's not difficult to do. I think for some of our colleagues, they do find it difficult, but I like that, Glenn, because I have to admit, Roseanne and myself, and maybe Selma as well too, when Selma gets to speak, we try to do those same things. We don't tell them that they're wrong. We show them that you just got to you went into a different direction or something like that. At the time, I can't think of the wording that I'll use, but I'll use it in the sense that not to grade them, but to show them that, yeah, I love your motivation. I love what you bring to it. I see where you were going, but here's where you could have turned or something like that.
Yeah, because I think that encourages them to answer in the future and doesn't shut them down.
You are correct. You are absolutely correct. And I think a lot of, especially I love saying this in the classroom, it's like everyone's favorite and hardest and difficult and challenging subject is math. And we all feel, we as mathematicians, we tell students that, oh no, you're always going to be wrong. And yeah, that's not always the fact. That's not always the fact. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Selma.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I have to forget. I'm forgetting that. Actually, I agree with Glenn. Also, when students have a courage to speak up and, of course, make a mistake, I don't tell them that's wrong. I'm saying that, oh, you are almost there, or you just need a couple of more steps to think you're in the right direction. So I want to encourage them to speak up later on. So find the words that actually works for him or her to do the same thing in the future, hopefully get the right answer. So I just wanted to add that.
No, it's a great addition too. I agree with you. I really do. There was one other person.
I use the same strategy, but I use phrases like, "Oh, probably you're seeing it like in a different perspective," and then I just explain them again. But I try not to get the phrase, "Oh, you're wrong," or "No, that's not the answer," because they feel discouraged when you use those kind of phrases. And yes, I also have conversation with the group like a little bit after for those that connect earlier and before the class, so that helps them to get motivated and to get really engaged in the class. So instead of just talking about the class, we start talking about how's going on the day, so and just a couple of minutes, not 10, just to make them feel like we care for them.
I like it. Nicole agrees with you. She says we have conversations after and before class. I always ask how they are doing. I provide a choice in the assignments. Some assignments, they tell their stories. I think acting class is pretty easy to build rapport through. But I have to say, Nicole, any class you can build a rapport because I build a rapport with my students in the math class. And again, I love in the beginning that students figure they come into a class after, let me use it again, they told them to take the class. And I tell them that, I'm showing them that how the class, in this case, can help them and relate to them. But again, I do conversations before and after. That's why I had my colleague, when I went to the symposium in New Orleans, and had me to stand up and say to everyone in the group and saying, you do all these things? Pretty much. I mean, I do it every day. However, I do like the conversations before and after because I do that. I do it a lot. I just have to remember sometimes, like my 1:30 class, for example, I'm rushing from one building to another. And if I'm having a student outside and we're walking in the building together, I remember my students telling me, oh, my God, you look like you're out of breath, Professor. I'm like, I'm trying to run to class and trying to get there to talk to you all before the class starts. And it's like, you're doing fine. You're talking to me. So I said, yeah, you're right. I am talking to you. So Russell writes, I use the phrase not yet when they have an incorrect answer. I like that, Russell. I like that very much. Anyone else would like to share things that you do to connect with your students in the classroom? All right. Greatly appreciate all of you. The next one we're looking at is talking about motivating adult learners. Now, a lot of times, and I guess as educators, we should know this, but some people or some educators really don't. We are dealing with adults in this case. I know it's weird to say it, and it's hilarious to say that people who are teaching at the college level don't realize they're dealing with adults, because we do. We are. We're dealing with adult learners in the sense that, A, they're individuals who are from the ages of 16 and above. And I say that because a lot of us in this case will have students in our classroom. We may not know their ages. And I taught a class in the summer, and I'm using me as an example. I didn't know I had a student who was 17 until after we were doing introductions and talking about, you know, what they expect from the class and et cetera. But he decided to take the class on his own. So before he was going away to college. And one of my students who was at the time in her 50s, she felt that it was just awkward because she's like, oh my God, the youngest person and I'm the oldest person. I'm like, nope, we're all adult learners. We're all adult learners. Why I say that is because the fact that we have to, motivating adult learners, we have to remember the following. Make them curious about the things that they're learning about, because a lot of times they figure that the curiosity that they had when they were younger is lost, and it's never lost. Curiosity in this case is always in its strongest in every learner. Music and humor actually work together. Again, that's why I said for all of you in the beginning, if we were in the classroom and the CTE, you would have had a song playing and you wouldn't have known about it. It would have got to this point of saying, for my class, music and humor. And I went to a presentation, which was a math presentation in Illinois, and the presenter came out doing math jokes. Now, everyone in the area was all mathematicians, but nevertheless, he was saying that sometimes we just can't go in the classroom being strong in our area when we have students who are intimidated. So have some fun with it. Put some humor and some music with it as well too. Challenge them. Challenge your students to be the person that they want to be, and challenge them with the contents that we're teaching them. Avoid the obvious. Avoid those things, like I agree with Russell, avoid those things that making the students feel embarrassed or putting those students in the spotlight where they really don't need to be. Mm-hmm. Teach unplug. Get away from teaching in the same traditional manner that we've always taught before. I say this because we have two colleagues. I say we have two colleagues at Triton. They teach every semester the same way. No change in their repertoire. So students, in this case, lose interest in taking the class, but they have to take the class because that person is the only one that teaches that course. So they don't feel that they get any benefit out of it. They don't feel that they're gaining anything. And I don't think the person in this case realized why students are like just not want to come to class. But we have to teach unplugged, and sometimes in this case, like in my class, we'll talk about something and I'll go into a tangent, but I'll bring it back because it still talks about mathematics. But I'll bring it back and it's like, that was an interesting point, and how it turned and how math actually works with it. So I do show the connection with it. I really do. Use their tech skills. Yes, we are in a technological age. If you're using just saying paper and pencil, sometimes mix it up a little bit and have them use their phones, because I've done that as well too. I purchased, which is in my office, what is called the Hidden Treasure, in this case, and I'm not sure if they sell it anymore, which it was at a teacher store, where students, the answers, but the students have to discover the answers on the paper. So you give them 6 problems, for example, and each problem has a choice of 10 answers. They have to discover which one is true in this case. And take a break. Take a break from and just give them a break sometimes in this case, because sometimes overwhelming them in the discussion, overwhelming them in the classroom, sometimes they just need to just break from it. And we forget that we're so passionate in doing it and talking about our subject, we forget that, oh my God, it's been 2 hours and I didn't have you have a break. That's what they mean by that as well. We have my connection. Oh, okay, okay. Will you be able to send us the recording to us? I think that is true. You will be able to get the recording for all of you. And again, you will be able to get the presentation as well too, because there is a link that I would love to show you in regards to teaching adults. It's a wonderful link. And within the link itself, within the video, it talks about how to do some of these things that is being talked about and keeping your adult learners motivated in the classroom. Most institutions, in this case, who have done a lot of research in adult learners, realize that some of the techniques that we've learned to keep our young learners involved do not apply to our adult learners, because we adult learners are looking how everything that they're learning in the classroom is related or be relevant to where they're in their field or the disciplines they're going into, or how it just works with them individually. Nicole looking at the only issue is with the graphs. Those seems a bit childish. What do you think, Shelley, about Nicole's statement?
I don't think I've used Flipgrid. Can't recall, so won't be able to speak much. If anybody else has used, they can speak about it. I'm sorry.
Anyone? I did not know that. I haven't used the technology. I really haven't.
I think we may have done a workshop on Flipgrid, but we can always bring it back again. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think Nicole brings up, and Russell as well too, brings up an interesting thing, especially dealing with motivating adult learners. Can anyone share any additional tech skills or things that you've done since of like off the grid, like music or pictures or humor, things that you want to share with the group of what you brought into the classroom to keep your students motivated?
Salma?
I actually use the Jeopardy Lab free edition that actually learned from one of the CT workshops and works really good for my correct class. They are really competitive there, so kind of put them in a groups, usually 2 to 3, and the material that we covered that class or previous class are part of the questions. For me to make this game for each class takes 20-25 minutes, but I can always reuse it next semester, and I think it's pretty useful. And they are really engaged. They are so competitive, unbelievable. Like even the older students, when I say older, I'm thinking not right away from high school. They just want to get points. It's sometimes so strange, but it's true.
I've done mathematics Jeopardy in this case, but it deals with the math that we're working with. But yeah, they're divided in groups and they work with that as well, like something that you're doing too, Selma. But I try to get them to be laughing and just to try to have fun, because I want them to learn that math is not all boring. There's some fun in there. There's some fun.
It's unbelievable how they can be so competitive. I sometimes I just smile. Oh, you didn't get it right on time or something like. They almost fight for the point, which is, I don't know, which is fun. Okay, I guess, but
it's true. It's true. I've had that as well too. It's true. I'm trying to think. One semester I did a mystery of mathematics where we went outside, and at the time, for those who have not been in Triton very long, it was before we had the president prior to President Moore was President Granada. And I remember being in the courtyard, and she was walking, and it was with one of the vice presidents. I can't remember who it was at the time. Maybe it was Doug Olson. And we're out doing mystery of mathematics in the courtyard, and they came up to me and asked me, "What is your class doing?" And I said, "Well, they're finding the hidden geometry figures in the buildings and in the structures and also in the ground, but they had to find at least 6 of those hidden geometry figures." So, for example, if we were in the class talking about geometry, and I was saying geometry is not taught in the classroom; it's taught in our lives. We deal with geometry, we live geometry, we work with geometry, we feel geometry. So I just took them outside and said, "Here's the paper that we're going to be working with. You need to discover these objects." So for any and all of you, don't keep it basic. I said like a square. You need to find 6 buildings or objects, ground or in the sky, something, and they have to work in pairs that have a true square shape. So they had to find these things, and so it was just thank you, Calvin. They had to find these things so that they understand how it works in real life as well, rather than just in the classroom. And I think it was Calvin who I think uses name tags in his classroom instead of Russell. But I could be wrong. It could be both of you, because I bet that both of you are in the business department. All right. Well, we don't want to lose everyone, so let's keep going. Here's some true motivational concepts as well too. Praise your students, inspire your students, encourage your students to do well, even if they're doing bad, but still encourage them. Reward their students. So I do like the point systems. I do that as well too. I do repeat and share and learn. All these things, again, have been in several other presentations, and it is all about keeping your students motivated. So all these things, like I said, for all of you, like I would do in my class, I just use my mouse and do the same thing and highlight them, that it does really work. It really does. I mean, I praise my students before class and saying, good morning, angels, because I think and I tell them that you're my inspirations because you're doing something I can never do. I inspire them to use every day a different inspiration to inspire them. I encourage them to talk with me. I encourage them to participate. I encourage them to learn with each other. I reward them, and maybe here's a game. And for my class, for all of you, I have to say I do what is called extra points. So the reward, in this case, I tell them if, in this case, this is a great class, I tell them this was a great class. We had a great learning session. The secretary, she or he, and I decided that we're going to give you some points away. And they're like, oh, my God. So they figure those points is going towards the grade, which it does, but it also gets them to say, hey, every day we did learn something new. He's going to give us points for it, so I need to come back every day and get those points. And sharing, yeah, like I said, I share with them even my hiccups. I told them I had a math class that my professor was just mean as heck, and I couldn't get anything through. But I kept going. I stayed in there. I kept pushing myself. I said, because if my instructor in this case doesn't know who I am, I'm going to make sure he or she does. And at that time, it was a she. And at the end of the semester, I told my class, I have to admit, she knew my name because I was determined that I was going to get a passing grade in this class, because my name is not you sitting in the back. So that was one of the things I shared with them. And then I told them what I've learned from the experience as well, too. Then, last but not least, for all of you, here is some additional references. This is a wonderful book. Motivate the Unmotivated, as our presentation is a wonderful book that does talk about a lot of different concepts that we did talk about today, and how to keep your students motivated. It is used not just for adult learners. It is also used for elementary as well too, and high school. And it's used for anyone as an educator who wants to motivate their unmotivated students.
All right.
So at this point, I just do apologize. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Shelley, unless you have any additional things talking about the motivating. Any additional things? But yep, I turn it over to Shelley. Shelley,
Yeah.
it's all
No,
you.
you've covered it all. I've done a great job. I just can't appreciate you enough, Tuan, for doing this. I know we've done this 3 times in a row, and it's always well attended, and people always walk away with great ideas. So thank you for sharing again. This workshop is being recorded, so I will send instruction on how to access the recording, but I will email everybody the PowerPoint for this. So thanks again, Tuan. Thanks everyone for attending the workshop.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. And like I say in my class on the ending day, thank you, my angels, and be safe and be well.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
All right.